The NovelKey creams were first released during August of 2018, and it was the first ever mechanical keyboard switch to be made entirely out of POM. At the time of writing this, these switches are some of the most popular linear switches on the market, but it wasn't always like this. From 2018 to 2019, after its initial release, sales dropped by a fair amount. There were some issues with stock and the first batch smelling like fish oil, but with all of that aside, they just gradually became less popular. They were still considered a decent mid-tier option, just not one of the best that you could get. But all of that changed in the beginning of 2020 after Types released his Tfue custom build video, which sparked the NovelKey creams hype train once again. Currently, they are priced at $6.5 for a pack of 10 switches, or 65 cents for a single switch, which puts them in sort of mid to high price range for a linear switch. Are they worth it? Well, let's talk about it. Hey everyone, my name is Hamaji and welcome to my NovelKey creams switch review. Okay, so for just a bit of context, I've been using the NovelKey creams for around 2 weeks now on my Warmer K87, and I think it's a really nice switch. There's a lot that could be improved, which we'll talk about in a bit. For now, let's talk about the housing. The NovelKey creams come in this off-white opaque housing and stem, which is once again made entirely out of POM. For context, POM is mainly used in switch stems, and that's mainly due to its low coefficient of friction compared to other thermoplastics. Some other examples of thermoplastics used in switches would be nylon. Nylon is mainly used in opaque switches like Cherry MX or Lilacs. And then you have polycarbonate, which is mainly used in transparent switches like Gateron switches or Zeal switches. The reason why I'm bringing this up at all is because on some websites where NovelKey creams are sold, POM is described as self-lubricating, which isn't incorrect, but it also provides a very inaccurate description of what's actually happening. Self-lubricating doesn't mean that the switch magically secretes Krytox or Tribosys every time you press on the switch. It just means that when POM rubs on another material, microscopic amounts of material will be transferred onto the surface, which will help to create a film and lubricate that surface, which reduces friction. And in theory, that sounds great. Why wouldn't you want a material in a switch to lubricate every time you press it? But in practice, it's not really effective, especially when you consider the fact that the NovelKey creams are considered to be some of the scratchiest linears on the market. So honestly, self-lubricating POM should just be removed from all websites that describe it like that, because even though it's not wrong, it just provides a very inaccurate description, and with a lot of beginners now getting into the scene, especially from Tfue's keyboard, I think that we should have a bit more beginner-friendly descriptions that are, more accurate. Okay, aside from that, the housing itself is really secure and very well manufactured. The overall build quality is great, and I've had no issues when working with them. So these switches are designed to be PVC mounted with the 2 extra pins on the bottom, and it has some really minimal switch wobble. When typing with the keyboard, I've had no issues at all with any switch wobble or rattling, but after some testing, the switch wobble is definitely slightly more pronounced in the north-south directions compared to the east-west directions. Okay, so let's move on to the overall feel and sound. The NovelKey creams have an actuation force of 55 grams, a bottom out force of 70 grams, and a standard total travel distance of 4 millimeters. For reference, Cherry MX Rids have an actuation force of 45 grams and have a total travel distance of 4 millimeters. Gateron Yellows actuate at 50 to 55 grams, bottom out at around 62 grams, and has a total standard travel distance of 4 millimeters. Gateron Black Inks actuate at 60 grams, bottom out at 70 grams, and also has a standard travel distance of 4 millimeters. Okay, so here's the force graph of the NovelKey creams, and yes, it's a linear, so it's a straight line. But here it is in comparison to the Gateron Yellows, and you can already see that the yellows require a lot less force when pressing down on the switch, and the return is slightly more gentle than the NovelKey creams. With that in mind, in terms of actuation force, NovelKey creams are sort of in the middle of all the linears on the market, and it strikes a really nice balance which provides a very nice typing experience. In terms of bottoming out, they're definitely on the higher end of the force spectrum. Compared to my Gateron Black Inks, I definitely feel like I have to work just a tiny bit harder to reach it, and that's not only because of its bottom out force and the springs, it's also because there's a bit of a distinct scratchiness within the NovelKey creams, which there's just a bit of resistance, so it requires me to press down a lot harder than I do for the Gateron Black Inks. Which brings me to my next point. You have to lube the NovelKey creams, and it's not just me saying lubing it will make it sound better just a tiny bit. No, you have to lube it or it will be completely unusable. Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, let me clarify what I was trying to say. For the price that the NovelKey creams are being sold for, they are not very smooth. NovelKey creams are being sold at the mid to high tier price range, and within this price range, the NovelKey creams don't really provide that same premium smoothness that I would expect. But it's all down to preference. Personally, I really like that premium smoothness that I get in the Gator on Black ink, where it's like no resistance, just smooth, and the bottom out feels really nice. The NovelKey creams instead have a scratchy, more resistant feeling, and the bottom out doesn't feel as deep, but it definitely still feels good. And if you're into that, then go for it. I won't stop you. So one of the main factors that make the NovelKey creams so scratchy is, of course, the use of polyoxymethylene, but another contributing factor are the stock springs. The stock springs within the NovelKey creams, especially before being lubed and even after being lubed, are scratchy and just not great. Okay, so final thoughts. Would I recommend the NovelKey creams? I'm gonna have to lean towards a little bit more of a no. And that's because I feel like the NovelKey creams is something that caters to a specific niche of people. If you like the sort of resistance when typing and you don't want ultimate smoothness, then sure, go for it. For anyone who really looks for a nice bottoming out experience, this is definitely a great switch to go to. It's not as deep and rich as my Gator on Black ink, but it still provides, a very nice thock at the bottom. If the Gator on Black inks were like a 9 out of 10 for that deep, rich thock, I'd say that the NovelKey creams, follow pretty closely with like an 8 to an 8.5. Another thing to take note of if you're still into NovelKey creams is if you want to get it smooth, you have to break it in. So I haven't reached that stage with my NovelKey creams yet, but you have to press down on each individual switch around 10,000 times in order for it to be broken in. And at that point, the switch will basically lose all of that crunchiness and roughness and will become really smooth. I think there's a lot of other switches on the market, and I highly recommend that you do your research before investing in the NovelKey creams. If you've listened to and tried all of the linear switches on the market and you still like the NovelKey creams, then go for it. I just think that there's a lot of other better linears on the market, and I just really believe that there's still a lot of improvements to be made with the NovelKey creams before I can consider it a viable endgame switch. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do consider subscribing. If you want to support this channel, you can support me on Patreon or join me on my Discord. We have a new keyboard category where all the keyboard fanatics are able to talk, and there's a lot of experienced people that can also help. So hopefully I can see you guys there. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. Oh, what a weird switch.